everybody, and today we are going to have a look at a range of mallets which I was introduced to just a few weeks ago by the founder of Epic Mallets. This is a fascinating range of mallets which I think you could well be interested in. They are fascinating for many reasons. The most important, I think, is that they seem to slot in to gaps in the market, in a way, gaps in the design market. There's several mallets I'm going to show you today which I've never really encountered any equivalent for the function that they are particularly strong at. This isn't their entire range, and I'm not an advertiser on their behalf. I haven't played these very much, so I'm exploring them almost from the similar starting point as you are. So to start with, however, I think it's nice to have a common sort of benchmark, if we like, and I thought what might be useful is I've got behind me, as you can see, a 32-inch Paiste symphonic gong, which many of you will be familiar with, and this is a Paiste M3 mallet, which also many of you may be familiar with. Let's hear what the M3 sounds like on this 32-inch gong before we start demonstrating all the range of Epic mallets. So, yeah, the standard medium-sized Paiste mallet that, as I say, many of us are familiar with. How does it compare? That's our benchmark anyway, and I'm going to introduce the first. It's actually the biggest and the chunkiest of the range, which is this, the Sun. They've all got lovely evocative names, these mallets, and what does this look like in comparison to the M3? There we go. I mean, obviously it's a lot more colourful, but we can tell immediately that we've got a much larger head. The shaft, or the handle, whatever you want to call it, is a lot shorter. And it's a lot chunkier, a lot thicker. It's kind of medium soft, but it's very chunky and it really brings out the bass tones. For a hefty mallet, it's fairly heavy. We've got this chart which has got very, very useful information supplied by Epic, which shows not only the weights and the dimensions of each of these mallets, but also the frequency range that they are optimum in. And this one particularly emphasises the lower, basser tones of the gong. And let's have a listen, shall we? The other feature about this mallet, which is particularly notable, is that it's angled in so that it's narrower at the top than at the bottom. It's very clever actually, it's quite subtle, but it does mean that the way that you approach each stroke of the gong, you're still getting the majority of the head on the surface of the gong. At the same time, it means that you can use a bit of wrist with it, even though it's quite a heavy mallet. So overall, I'm surprised at how playable this is. When I first picked it up, I thought the shaft was too short, it was too fat, and I wasn't convinced about the balance. And all those things, after playing for a little bit, I'm more convinced by. So there we are. The first one, the Sun mallet. Next one, there's a couple of these in their range. These are called gravity mallets. Same colour, but really quite a different beast. Similar in many ways. Look, we've still got the short, stubby, fat shaft. The head is a little bit smaller, and compared to the M3, well, it's a very different looking mallet, isn't it? The mallet head actually, again, is sort of angled slightly in. I think we've still got a little bit of a narrower top to the mallet head compared to the bottom of it, which again makes this stubby, actually that's a bit of an unfortunate term, stubby, this shorter, thicker shaft, really comfortable to handle, and this one particularly feels well balanced to me. We're going to have a listen to this and see how different it is to our Sun mallet. So this one is the softer of two gravity mallets. Okay, so quick comparison with the M3 again. So this mallet, I would say, is still very good at bringing out the lower tones of the gong, but we are beginning to get some more higher frequencies, mid particularly frequencies, come through a bit stronger with this. But again, it's a very well balanced mallet of a similar sort of design as the Sun, the gravity medium soft. Now these two, I'm bringing these up at the same time. These are called the Big Bear and the Little Bear. And these are softer. Let's just take the Big Bear to start with. This has got, actually still got a fairly hard core, but it's got a very soft exterior, which does give it a particular quality for lower volume, softer playing. And let's have another comparison with the M3 in terms of the size. We've got a shorter shaft, but it is a lot thinner than we've seen on the previous two. And again, this one feels very well balanced, despite the fact that it's got quite a big head on it. So let's just have a comparison with the big bear and the little bear. Of course, this one's a lot lighter. It's a similar design, but smaller and lighter head, which means that it's going to be even that much more delicate. So I'm going to play one and then the other and maybe do a quick comparison with the M3 again. Here we go. This is one of my favourites in the collection. It's sort of soft, brings out soft tones from the gong, but quite a lot more higher frequencies than the big bear. This is the little bear. Another quick comparison with the M3. This mallet I know very little about. Harder, now we're getting back to a harder core and smaller, lighter shaft. Let's compare it again, first of all, to it's still a good bit shorter than the M3 shaft, but it's also a great deal thinner. I think it's been chosen because even though the head is quite heavy, it does feel very well balanced. I think you might be able to guess what impact this is going to have. We're going to lose some of the lower bass frequencies from the gongs. They're not going to be so apparent, and it's going to bring out a lot more mid and, let's hope, perhaps a little more higher frequency. So this is emerging as one of my favourites as well. There's a series of 4 planet mallets that Epic offer. This is Mars, and these are harder mallets. These are really an interesting design, a sort of lozenge-shaped core over a rather attractive overlay. It's some sort of felt. We've got one of these medium-sized shafts on it, again, about the same size as the little bear and the big bear. I'm going to go straight ahead and give a quick demo of this one. Very different sort of mallet. So this is another mallet I'm really warming to. You really do have to be careful not to overplay with it, but it really does bring out the upper tones, and I really like the way that you can use this to accent strokes with the gongs and bring out the higher, mid and upper tones. A lovely mallet, this one. Mars in the range of 4 planet mallets. Now we're moving up to smaller and harder mallets. We're back to the thinner shaft. This is longer now. I think we are almost comparable, yes, just about in length to the M3 shaft, but look how we are certainly in the range of small heads. So this is going to bring out the upper frequencies of the gong, and we're going to lose pretty much most of the lower end. So again, let's have a go. Always recommended to have some smaller, harder mallets, harder headed mallets in one's mallet box, and this one really doesn't disappoint. I think it's a lovely little mallet, and this is called the Moon Mallet. Now these are something that I have never seen before. This is called Voyager II. The head is, compared to this one, it's slightly smaller and slightly harder, but it's kind of the same idea, but it's double-headed. These two are pretty much equal in size and heaviness, small and fairly hard. And how on earth do you play this? Well, when I first picked this up, it reminded me of the Celtic Irish drum mallet, the Celtic drum called the bodhran, I think that's how you pronounce it, which has got a similar design to this. And the idea is it's kind of a roller. You know, instead of having 2 mallets the same size that you're using to roll, you can use this to roll. Once you pick up the idea of how to hold it and how to handle it, and how to create strokes on the gong with it, it brings out, not only can you roll with it, it leaves, as Sam, the founder of Epic, explained to me, I said to him, why bother with this if you could just use two mallets to roll? He said, well, it leaves your other hand free, which is actually an extremely good point. But the other thing is that I've found is that you can also get a whole range of strokes that perhaps you wouldn't be able to get with when you've got one mallet in each hand. So actually, once you get the knack of it, I've really grown to love this double-headed Voyager II, and there's another one in the range which has got two heads, which is called the Stardust II. Although the mallet heads on either end of these are really fluffy and they look very soft, inside they have a really hard core, harder than the previous one. I'm not quite sure why they've put this very soft, fluffy coating on the top, but this one side is slightly harder and smaller than the other. This one is even more unusual, I think, than the first double header that we've heard. So this is going to be the last of the mallets that we try, and probably the most unusual. So here we go. So just to compare those two, I must say I prefer this one, but then I haven't played this one so much, and I think this one is probably a bit more of a tricky proposition to master. I haven't quite got my head around it yet. That is the end of this lightning fast roundup. This isn't the whole of the range of Epic mallets. I know they have a number of others, but I hope that's given you a good indication that these mallets are worth exploring. So thanks very much for watching, and see you next time.